Good morning. It's 9:01 on August 31st, 2011, and this meeting of the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority Board is now in session. So, Ms. Rowe, any public comments?
No, no one signed up.
Okay. Item 3, adoption of the minutes for the CRRMA board meeting of July 28th, 2011. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes? Any additions, changes, deletions? With that, is there a motion to adopt the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Minutes are adopted. Item 4, update, discussion, and action on the Loop 375 at I-10 America's Interchange Project. Mr. Tejas.
Raymond Tejas, Executive Director. Now that construction has started on the America's Interchange project, I wanted to brief the board on a couple of administrative items, and then we're going to turn it over to our GEC, Pete Jacobs, who is actually the project manager for us on the project, and he's going to talk a little bit about the actual construction activities to date. So first, I wanted to mention, and as we've discussed in the past, there's the requirement for a dispute resolution board in the contract that in the comprehensive development agreement. That dispute resolution board, the intent of it is really to handle any disputes between the developer and the owner, the RMA in this case, and really avoid litigation. That dispute resolution board met for the first time on August 24th and had a very productive meeting. So I wanted to let you know that that process is up and running already, and we'll be meeting quarterly from here forward. The second item I wanted to mention is the monthly newsletters. We've been, yes, sir.
What item are you on? I thought it 4 or 5 on the agenda.
Item 4. This is the updates. Discussion action on Loop 375 at I-10 America's Interchange.
The resolution, whatever. I thought, okay, that's fine, thanks.
Yeah, the America's Interchange project, the contractor is performing wonderfully, but we're just required by the contract to put this dispute board in place to potentially handle any issues.
Okay.
So,
But you also have item 6, right? That's for you.
That's for the Cesar Chavez project?
Okay,
Item
so we
6.
have one per?
One, I'm sorry?
This board resolution is per project or?
No, I'm
Anyway,
sorry.
go ahead. I'm
The
confused.
dispute, I'm sorry. What I'm discussing is the dispute resolution board. It's a separate board. It consists of 3 engineers.
Right. Isn't that what item 6 is about?
No,
Oh, okay.
no. And I'll talk about item 6 next, but it's actually very different.
Okay.
Okay.
Ralph, you're confusing me.
Yes, I'm confused. I'm confused.
I'm a little lost now. I
Well,
think.
what happened to update? It says update and discussion on Loop 375, and suddenly we're talking about resolution boards, and so I said, whoa, okay.
Okay. Well, and let me phrase it differently. The America's Interchange obviously has very many parts to it. One part is the requirement that we have a dispute resolution board that helps guide disputes and really helps to resolve disputes before we get into a situation of litigation. So I'm just letting you know that the board has met and will meet quarterly from here forward.
Did we have one on the spur as well? Was there a DRB for the spur 601 project?
No, actually, that was a TxDOT project, and we provided the financing for that. TxDOT has a separate dispute resolution process that they use that's codified and is required by their statutes. So we resolve disputes a little bit differently.
Got it. And I personally, this was all agreed to on the front end, and it's a great way to just kind of meet and discuss certain items as construction is in place that come up, and to work through them to try to get them taken care of.
And I would mention, actually, this is a good segue into the partnering efforts as well. In addition to the dispute resolution board process that we have in place through the Comprehensive Development Agreement, we also have what's referred to as partnering. That partnering is also it's really intended to be the first step to resolve any disputes that we have with the developer. And that partnering consists of in fact, that partnering group consists of Scott McLaughlin as the chair, myself, and our project manager, Pete Jacobs. In addition to that, the developer has several representatives, and TxDOT has several representatives on that group as well. We meet quarterly and discuss how the project is moving, what areas need help, and that sort of thing. If a dispute is not resolved in the partnering sessions, then it moves into the more formal dispute resolution board process. So we have a couple of steps that we take to resolve issues before they actually get to litigation. So they work hand in hand. In fact, the partnering sessions have been going on. I think we've had 3 to date. and we meet quarterly for those as well. So we have a number of steps to resolve conflict, and I think they've been actually very useful to date.
I agree. If there's anything that CRRMA and I learned is, we got a little bit of a late start on the first partnering session, and it allowed some issues to kind of build up. So the first partnering session there's a whole lot of things to get on the table and work out. The next one was much smoother, and once we got kind of the lines of communication open and everyone working together, it really seemed to facilitate and get the project moving much more seamlessly with everyone communicating. Because of a project of this size, really any size, this is the first partnering session type work that I've sat on, and I've been really impressed with how effective it is as a tool to get this project on track and moving. So,
Right. So, and the next partnering meeting is set for October 3rd, so that's coming up. Beyond that, as I mentioned, and as you have all received, we have begun developing monthly newsletters to update the community on the progress construction-wise for this project. The newsletter is intended to be an emailed newsletter, and I think we've discussed this at a past meeting, but now you actually have it in front of you. We'll be printing small amounts of the monthly newsletter and distributing those to some of the major stakeholders. By way of example, the council member that represents the district that includes the project will receive them. The MPO will receive them, and we can hand them out from there. So you have those in front of you. You are all also included on the email newsletter list. That is a separate list that is only the recipients only receive the newsletter on a monthly basis. So we're trying not to inundate folks with emails. So if anybody's interested, we have additional copies, and we'll get some for you. Beyond that, if anybody's interested in receiving the email newsletters, the information is on the back. They can send an email to info@crrma.org and ask for the newsletter, the monthly Americas Project newsletter, and we can get those out to them.
one of the things we're trying to do too is, we know that these projects create a certain level of frustration with the motoring public, so we want to let the citizens here know what's going on, what's happening with the project, try to, be very proactive in answering any questions they may have, and at least have the information available so they can kind of see what we're doing. TxDOT's proactive in terms of lane closures and just try to get the word out and the progress. And, I think we're still on track for a January, hopefully sooner, 2013 completion date. So we'll have more updates on that as we continue. So,
Have there been any complaints?
I don't believe so. Not to date. No, sir.
I will tell you that I know I distribute them out. We sent them out in our lobby at my east side location, and people are asking for them. So people are interested.
Excellent. Well, and we'll get you some
I'm
more.
going to get some more.
Absolutely. We'll get you some more. Great. And I'm actually handing them out at the speaking events that I attend. And in fact, at the last one that I attended, all of the folks that were there got added to our email list. So it's a good way to keep them informed. So I think it's real helpful. The last thing I wanted to mention before we kick it over to the construction side is that, as you know, this project has 4 separate funding sources. One of the main funding sources is the State Infrastructure Bank loan, whereby the RMA borrowed $30 million from the State Infrastructure Bank and is repaying that debt through the incremental revenue generated through the city's transportation reinvestment zone. The first payment for that SIB loan is actually due on September 15th. And that first payment is actually $1,138,500. Of that, it really consists of 2 sources. The first source is $939,262.50 from the city of El Paso, which is really the increment of the TRZ. Then the remainder is 1/2 of the Build America bond subsidy that we structured. As we structured this as a Build America bond, we have the federal subsidies that come back. That federal subsidy is cut in half. Half of it comes to the RMA. Half of it goes to pay down this debt. So I wanted to mention it because this is a first big step for that SIB loan. Of course, the debt goes out, the payments go out annually from starting September 15th of this year through September 15th of 2040. So it's a long debt, but this is the first step in a number of steps to go. But I thought it was important. I thought I'd mention it to you all.
as I mentioned, Mr. Tejas, it's almost like a mortgage. We have a 30-year
Yeah.
debt service on this. I mean, it's a huge project. The fact that it could get built and brought forward because of the ARA funds and everything kind of coming together. I don't know how much this project was advanced, but we were fortunate to be able to get this project built and going when we did, so.
Absolutely. Subject to your questions, then I would turn it over to Pete Jacobs, and he can talk a little bit about the construction side of the project.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name's Pete Jacobs, GEC Project Manager representing the RMA on this project. Let's see if we got this up.
We have it on our screens. Can you see it, Pete?
Yeah, I can see it on mine. What we have is a layout. There we go. We have a layout with Loop 375 going from the bottom left to top right. We call that north to south or south
And
to
I'm
north.
sorry, I don't have it on my screen.
Or she's broken.
Maybe on this one, Susan?
You want me to check? I can move.
While he's doing
I'm
that,
good.
while he's doing that, what's with this A&M circle? What's that about?
I hate to say it, but that is the name of that street. It is A&M Circle.
How'd that happen?
Obviously, some very forward thinking.
I demand equal, anyway, no.
And so focused on the A&M Circle, that's in the southeast corner. Very little work's going to be going on in that area. The northeast corner, that's going to be some work, not a lot. The northwest is where we're doing the majority of our work, and then in the southwest, there's going to be a little bit also. We're calling I-10 east and west, and then 375 north and south for simplicity. What we've done so far to date. To date, we have 49 employees with AGB. That's including all of their people and their subs that are on the site today. We, the GEC, have 12 people. That includes all of our designers who are doing the reviews. The AGB does not include their design team anymore. Their design team is off the job. And then we have 7 TxDOT, which 5 of those are the inspectors. To date, there have been no accidents. And thank goodness, and we're working very diligently to make sure that stays that way. The design is complete except for 3 packages, and all 3 of these, we're working with them trying to finalize it. We have approved 29 design packages so far to date. Roadway, drainage, those type of things. We're starting to do the dirt work, mainly in the cloverleaf areas. We're pulling the dirt out of those cloverleaf areas, making retention ponds, and then using that to backfill and make our embankment. We're having to move the eastbound frontage road south, so we're going to have quite a bit of embankment in that area. And then for our on-ramps, or our approach slab ramps, we'll have to do some embankment there also, which would be at both ends of all the direct connectors. Traffic control, this is a very difficult thing we're working on right now. It's keeping with the traffic, making sure everything's going smoothly. This is where our biggest focus is really, and making sure that the public is safe and how we're doing activities. We haven't started any drainage as of this, but it actually starts this week, next weekend. So,
Can I ask a question about that? I mean, it may seem irrelevant to us to some extent, but out there on the east side, whenever it rains, they have a lot of problems, it seems. Or at least I see on TV. So is that looking forward to a potential big rain season like the one we had in 2006 or something like that? Or are you just sort of...
what we do when we're doing this traffic control, for instance, that was one of our issues.
Yeah.
When they put up these concrete barriers, they can be solid and they will trap the water. So one of the big issues we had was making sure that we had the drainage to be able to go through it. Something else is we have to keep the drainage open at all times. So regardless of where we are working, it has to drain. So we have a couple of temporary drainage systems going in right now, so that as work proceeds, we will continue to have our drainage going through the area. Does that help? Yeah, it's a big issue, believe me. Even the little rains we've been having here, we're very concerned about making sure we stop activities out there. We clean up the road, because if sand and other things wash out on it, it becomes slick. So we immediately start cleaning that off. So
The problem would be if the project is finished and then we have a problem there with flooding or something, and then we have to go and break down and open up the concrete and so forth and do all kinds of retrofitting to accommodate that
no, we-
possibility, like 2, 3, 4 years down the
No,
road?
our design takes into consideration that we have to go for 100-year floods in these areas. We cannot change what's going in there today and what we discharge.
Yeah.
So we've taken into consideration all the improvements that we're making to it, all the additional concrete that we're adding there for non-pervious surfaces. So we're having to pick up that water. So our system does design for that.
And as the area grows, and there's more streets, more houses, and so forth, the water is going to take certain channels.
That's correct.
So all this, I guess, is part of that design that,
That's correct, it is. We take that into consideration. We use zoning concepts for all, what areas that are not developed, so we can use those. For instance, if it's zoned for an industrial type area, then we would consider that to be a non-pervious area, and we would size our system accordingly. The one issue that we have is we cannot discharge any more than is going off the site today. So if, when we add additional impervious areas, we have to contain it within our area. So that's why we're building some of these ponds, the percolation ponds.
And the drainage is actually one of the is a large package of the overall design, is that correct?
That is exactly right. We're just finishing it up because it keeps evolving as construction's going on, and as well as making sure that we're way ahead. One of the last issues we're doing is putting a mitigation report together. It'll be several hundred pages that shows exactly how we went through every step of the way to make sure that we're all very comfortable with what we're.
yeah, now I notice things that I wouldn't have noticed before, but right here by the 54 and I-10, for example, these ponds right there where the columns stand, I notice they fill up really quickly. They start, so it's like, oh.
Water
I
is
could
an
see.
amazing thing, yeah.
Right.
We talk in cubic feet per second, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, you start putting that into 50 cubic feet per second. In 1 minute, you've got 3,000 cubic feet.
Right.
And just all of a sudden, there's water coming out of nowhere.
Right.
So we're very concerned about it.
Thank you.
We haven't started any retaining walls yet. We'll probably start doing some of the fabrication off-site. Those will be precast panels. Structures, we are out there. We have 114 drilled shafts. We've done 13 of them. And on this project, we're using single column, single drilled shafts. So they're very large drilled shafts. They're averaging a little over 7 foot in diameter of the 114. And they're all about 60 foot deep as an average. Some of them go as much as 100 feet. So they're very, very large, very difficult to work with. But we only have, I believe it's 98 columns. So this is going to be a forest of columns when it's all finished. Paving hasn't started yet. That's typically the very last thing that we'll do to get in there. We're starting to move a lot of the electrical services out of the way. And the ITS, which is the TxDOT system for communication within their own system, as well as their illumination, we've started moving and relocating all that. Utility agreements. We have 14 MUAAs on this project, which are master utility adjustment agreements. And of those 14, 3 are still outstanding. None of these 3 should impact the schedule. We also have, of these utility, we have about 30 design packages and construction packages we have to review and approve, and all but these 3 are done. Utility relocations, you've probably seen them out there. We've relocated the power poles on the northwest corner, and they're complete up in that area. Now we just have to get the other ones out of the way. And now we're putting in on the eastbound south side of the road, we're putting in a new transmission line up against what is going to be the new right-of-way, so you can see how far over we're moving. This is one of those drilled shafts. That one is approximately 85 foot high, and it's a 10-foot diameter steel cage. Then that crane, they decided to go with a bigger crane on the next one. It was pushing the limits. And on this one, as far as the safety, you can see where they're out in the road. It's because it was safety, we decided to do a rolling closure on this one. In other words, slowed traffic down, let them swing out very carefully. Took about 5 minutes, but then we put it back in, lined it up, and that was, again, safety is such a major concern. We wanted to make sure it wasn't an issue. Here we are doing some of the excavation in one side, inside of Cloverleaf, taking this wonderful sand that we have in this area and moving it over to another area and compacting it again as part of the embankment. This is on the northbound 375 in front of the Dykes and Dykes trucking firm. Looking south, we're relocating some of the power. In this case, we're relocating some water and sewer that has to be moved back out. And this is over on the west side, on the southbound, just south of the Bolero station, in front of the new palm tree factory there, or nursery. And we had to remove an existing concrete culvert, and we're going to be putting everything in boxes in this area because we're moving the road over a little bit. Now here again is that power line on the eastbound frontage road where we've relocated it. What's interesting is this is the transmission line. Now we have to put a distribution line in, which are two complete different operations, two different groups of people you deal with, and they don't like to talk to each other. But so we're having to coordinate all this. So we get the transmission line in, and it should be finished this week. We're pushing for. And then the distribution line will come in, and they just do the little wooden poles. This is looking at that same line. You can see that we have a couple of these corner power poles where we're turning at an angle, and those take foundations also. So we have to do the drill shaft. The El Paso Electric's doing their own work on this one, and there are 3 others that the utility companies are doing their own. Otherwise, our contractor is responsible to design and install all the utilities, which helps. This is the schedule. To date, we're at 39% of the contract time, and we're at 29% of the contract value. And you can see on here the design is done according to this, which is fairly accurate. We are complete. Utilities are going and blowing. We should be able to finish those up before the end of this year, and that looks very doable. And then we have it broken up by the south to west direct connector, the north to west direct connector, and the east to north direct connector. Then we have some of the roadway segments broken up, because we'll close certain parts of the roadway down, leave the other ones open. And everything is scheduled to be complete in the first quarter of 2013. And we're pretty comfortable that's going to happen. AGB's has the goal of finishing this by October 31st, and they're very confident they're going to make that. So if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
You're going to make sure they get them finished by October 31st?
That's what our goal is. They have their countdown clock in there. We're using that one.
Well, I think they're actually, I think the actual current contract required date is, what is it, January 2000?
January 8th, yes.
Okay.
2013, and we're fairly comfortable that shouldn't be a problem at all.
Good.
This is not
Good presentation. And I think it's helpful. And I was talking to Raymond today. I think it'd be great if we provided some sort of quarterly update going forward, because there's going to be a lot of work happening on a quarterly basis. And I'm not sure if you'll be handling that or someone from AGB will be handling it.
We'll determine.
We'll work out the semantics. But,
it's going to really get started up. We've now scheduled for not this coming weekend, the following weekend, for the next 2 weekends, 24-hour work for a couple of weekends in a row. So it's time to get going.
well, we're going to talk a little later about potentially adding a 4th direct connector, and the potential of that, which for this project would be huge. And this is definitely the time to do it because we're right in the middle of it. So we'll talk about that here in a few minutes. Thank you, Pete.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Randall, is there any action required on item 4, or is it just purely update?
No, sir. Just an update.
Okay. Item 5, discussion and action on a board resolution authorizing the executive director to execute a 4th amendment to the project development agreement, El Paso Loop 375 projects. Those are basically the 3 projects on 375, which is the Northeast, Zaragoza, and Cesar Chavez, dated January 29th, 2009, with the Texas Department of Transportation relative to the pre-development and pre-construction activities for 3 projects within the 2008 Comprehensive Mobility Plan. Mr. Tejas?
As a reminder, the RMA has an agreement, a project development agreement with TxDOT that provides resources to the RMA to develop the preliminary work necessary for the development of the 3 Loop 75 projects. And those projects are actually Trans Mountain Northeast, as you mentioned, Zaragoza as well, but it actually includes the Americas interchange, not Chavez. It's the non-toll projects.
My apologies.
However, as you'll note, we've amended the planning project development agreement 3 times in the past. We're actually asking for a 4th amendment. This 4th amendment is simply to add time. The current planning project development agreement is set to expire close of business today. So we're looking to extend this 1 additional year, and that will actually provide the resources that we need to continue work on the Trans Mountain Northeast, as well as the Zaragoza project, and as well as some of this additional work for the potential 4th direct connector that we're going to talk about later in the agenda. So this is it's very timely and a very important item, especially seeing as how we don't have all of the agreements in place for the Zaragoza or the Trans Mountain Northeast project just yet. So this is a good way to bridge that gap and to allow the RMA to continue with resources necessary to continue working on the project. So with that, and subject to your questions, I'd ask for approval on this item.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor? All those opposed? Item is approved. Item number 6, discussion and action on board resolution authorizing the executive director to execute the following instruments as they relate to the development of Loop 375 Cesar Chavez Border Highway Managed Lanes projects. A, an amendment to the second amended and restated financial assistance agreement with the Texas Department of Transportation. B, project development agreement with the Texas Department of Transportation. And C, amended and restated work authorization number 7 with Atkins North America, Inc. as the CRRMA's general engineering consultant.
Now, this one you will remember from last month. And actually, let me give a little bit of background on this one. As you know, the RMA is interested in the Cesar Chavez project through a number of various approaches. Originally, the RMA was going to develop and construct and operate the toll facility. TxDOT has since taken over the design and will also is managing the construction of it as we speak. So what you see before you here are actually 3 items that would amend the existing agreements to allow for the RMA to essentially do its due diligence over the coming 2 years, and at the end of those 2 years, evaluate and determine whether or not the RMA should operate the managed lanes at the completion of the project, once the project is completed. So that's what you see before you. Unfortunately, we've not yet completed the documents A and B, which are the amended and restated financial assistance agreement with TxDOT or the project development agreement with TxDOT. That's still under negotiations, unfortunately. So I'm going to ask that these items be deleted again this month, and hopefully we can get them resolved before the next board meeting, which is set for September 14th, at which point I would bring them back for review and approval.
Item C, is that something we can discuss today, 6C?
And item 6C is simply the work authorization that would allow the GEC to do the work necessary for items A and B.
Which we need to have first.
That's right. Right, because depending upon the scope that's finalized in items A and B, that will drive the scope for item C.
Got it. Is there a motion to delete item 6?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Item 6 is deleted. Item 7, discussion and action on board resolutions authorizing the executive director to execute the following instruments as they relate to Loop 375 at FM 659 Zaragoza Direct Connector Project. A, a pass-through toll agreement with the Texas Department of Transportation in an amount not to exceed $7 million. B, a state infrastructure bank loan agreement with the Texas Department of Transportation in an amount not to exceed $20 million. And C, work authorization number 8 with Atkins North America as a CRRMA's general engineering consultant. Mr. Tejas?
Unfortunately, I've got the same report on this one. We've not completed the documents with TxDOT just yet, so I'll be asking for this item to be deleted. Now, I should mention, too, that I've included this on both of these items, number 6 and number 7, on last month's agenda as well as this month's, because we continue to negotiate with TxDOT, and I have the hopes that we'll resolve this before the board meeting. So I've done that. I likely will not do that next time unless we're actually very close. So I apologize for bringing this back repeatedly and then asking to be deleted. However, on this one, I should mention that we actually did get the draft agreements from TxDOT on this item. However, as you may recall from our last legislative update, there was some legislation passed in this last session that allowed for the decoupling of the transportation reinvestment zones use of incremental revenue generated from the pass-through component. So what we've asked TxDOT to do is go back and review that statute and see if we can't get rid of the pass-through toll agreement from the structure related to the Zaragoza Direct Connector project. So that's why this one has been delayed. It's a somewhat of a new development. We've asked them actually to delete the pass-through toll agreement altogether. So they're reviewing that now, and hopefully we can get this done for the September 14th meeting. So with that, I'd ask that this item be deleted as well. Yes, sir.
What's the likelihood of them agreeing to do that?
Well, it seems clearly the intent of the amendment to the resolution was to allow just for this, since, in fact, we helped draft the language. We provided it to Representative Pickett, and he passed it. So the intent was clear. We just need to make sure that TxDOT's attorneys understand and agree with the legislation as passed. I feel confident about it, but until they say yes, we won't know.
And by decoupling it from a pass-through toll agreement, basically that makes the agreements much simpler. Is that correct?
Absolutely. It removes an entire agreement from the process. And in fact, I would mention, too, not only would that...
Process goes away as well. Is that correct? Is there a market evaluation process that's part of the pass-through toll agreement?
No, sir.
Okay,
However, if we are able to make this effective for Zaragoza, it would also apply to the Trans Mountain Northeast, and more importantly, it would actually apply to the Americas project. If you remember, the Americas project obviously is using $30 million in transportation reinvestment zone revenue. We have a pass-through toll agreement in place, which requires us to actually go out and issue $5 million in debt and pay it back through the pass-through toll revenue. If we can remove that from the Americas project, it removes the financing costs and actually saves the project money. So it's a little bit bigger than just the Zaragoza that they're reviewing it, but the intent has always been all along to remove it from all the projects. So that's our goal.
Is there a motion to delete item 7? All those in favor?
I'll second it.
So thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Item 7 is deleted. And I know Raymond's been working diligently to get these items processed. We're required to have these items posted on our agenda 72 hours prior to the board meeting. So I've asked Raymond that if something's close, leave it on the agenda, and that way if it gets done, we can handle it in the board meeting. It gives us a little more flexibility. He'll decide which ones he needs to put going forward. But these items are not delayed because of a lack of effort on Mr. Tejas' part. He's been working diligently to get this done. It just, there's some paperwork and bureaucracy involved, and it's just taking a little longer. So, Raymond, thank you for your efforts.
Thank you for the comments. I appreciate it.
Item 8, discussion and action on a board resolution adopting the fiscal year 2012 CRRMA budget as recommended by the CRRMA Finance Committee. Mr. Tejas.
Yes, so before you, included in the backup, you actually have the resolution that adopts the budget for fiscal year 12. And as attachment 1, you actually have the cash flow statement, which we use as the budget for the RMA. I figured that I would go, and this was vetted thoroughly with the Finance Committee. Unfortunately, the Finance Chair, Mr. Marcus, was not able to attend our meeting today. However, the other Finance Committee members are here, Mr. Volk and Ms. Melendez, and I'll ask them, after I go through a brief overview, I'll ask them if they'd like to share any comments about the Finance Committee meeting. So with that in mind, then, I wanted to touch on some of the high points. The estimated cash beginning of the period, we're looking at $234,616. We're looking at the existing FAA loan, which remains with us for $290,000. We spent $10,000 of that loan over this past fiscal year, and we have the fiscal year 11 interest, which is $38,916. Of the projected revenue, I would mention that we've got the fiscal year 12 interest, which is anticipated at $40,000. We have the salary reimbursement by project, which is $100,000. That, as you'll recall, is when the RMA enters into or pursues a project. My salary is a portion to that project, so I take a portion of my salary based on the amount of hours I spend on that project and actually build a project. So that's where that reimbursement comes from. The SPUR 601 revenue, which is $46,671, that actually is built into the bond deal that we have on the SPUR 601, whereby we receive a little over $23,000 each 6 months for administrative fees. That pays for if we need any engineers to help with with some of the work, if we need the lawyers to review any provisions and that sort of thing. So that is actually on a sliding scale. As the bonds are defeased, that amount, that percentage goes down. But for this next fiscal year, we will be earning $46,671. Beyond that, the next item is the Americas Interchange BAB subsidy, and that's what we discussed earlier. The federal subsidy comes back to the project and then is cut in half. Half of it goes to the city to pay down the debt. The other half comes to the RMA, and that's what you see here before you. So this is the first time that we actually have that infusion. Yes, sir.
Is that our half, or is
Yes, sir.
that 248 is our half?
Yes, sir. That is. Beyond that, we have the total projected expenses. As you see, the salaries and the fringe benefits, those numbers were approved by the board at the last month's meeting. And I'll touch on some of the items that have changed. The board and executive director travel has not changed. And in fact, we've spent just slightly over half of that over this last fiscal year. So I think that number is fine. The board surety bonds is a new line item. Originally, that was built into, I believe, office expenses. I've added it as a line item so that you all have a little more detail as to where the funds are actually going. And that's, as a reminder, each of the board members have surety bonds on you related to your official duties here. Professional licenses and continuing education, that's a contractual provision that allows me to continue with my license as a licensed attorney in the state, including the education related thereto. Normally, I spend much less than the $2,500, but that's the contractual amount, so we build that into the budget. The memberships, you'll note, is at $6,000 this year. Last year, it was at $1,000. We are a member currently of Team Texas. That's a $1,000 membership each year, and I recommend that we continue with that group. The additional $5,000 I've rolled in there in the event that we would like to join the IBTTA, which is the International Bridge, Tunnel, and Turnpike Association, I believe it is. And they're actually a worldwide organization that virtually all of the tolling entities throughout the state, for sure, but the country as well, are members of. And it's a really good organization to join. However, we don't necessarily need to join it just yet because we don't actually have a toll facility on board. But we may monitor their seminars and some of their publications to see if we want to join them this year. Otherwise, we will likely join them over the coming years, especially as Cesar Chavez comes online as our first toll project. So I added that in here in the event that we want to join them. And in that event, if it makes sense, I'll bring it to the board so that you all know what we're up to.
And the membership is 5,000?
Approximately. It depends specifically on how many tolling facilities you have and some other variables. So the high end, it would be 5,000. I anticipate it would actually be lower than that.
Okay.
The office expenses was increased from 1,000 to 2,000. Actually, we don't spend a lot of money on office expenses, but this covers incidentals in the event that I'm in Austin and I need use of a hotel, printing services and that sort of thing. That's where this budget comes out, or that's what comes out of this budget. I've increased it actually to 2,000. I think that we may need some additional computer hardware this next coming year. In the event that we actually enter into pass-through toll agreements with TxDOT, we normally have all of the data that is generated through the pass-through facility, meaning every vehicle that passes every hour, that sort of thing, is routed through the city system and into our computer. We may need to actually add a computer this year if we add additional pass-through projects. Beyond that, I noticed when I'm traveling to Austin, I may actually request either a laptop or some sort of a tablet or some additional device over this coming year.
Yellow pad, tablet?
Yes, Indian Chief, actually. But I mention that because a lot of the documents that we're working on these days are actually Excel. And to date, I've been taking my personal laptop, and it's worked out fairly well. But a lot of times I don't need a full laptop, so a tablet might work well. And I have actually used my personal iPad, but you can't really use the iPad very well with Excel spreadsheets and Word documents. So it's something out there. I'm not doing anything just yet, but I kind of added it in there just in the event that.
Well, let us know what you need to become more productive. I can tell you that Raymond is a very good steward of RMA funds. When he travels to Austin, he'll stay with relatives. He'll really watch every penny that he spends. And as you know, as the chair and a member of the board, I very much appreciate how frugal you are. And if Raymond asks for something, I can tell you it's because he really does need it, and it will help him to do a better job. So you let us know what you need.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
He's on your payroll or what?
I wish my guys that I worked with were that frugal, you know?
Okay, so the next item, I'm going to keep moving here. The next item actually is PR outreach and the printing and mailing. What I've done this year is actually separated them into separate line items. Last year, we had budgeted $15,000 for the annual report, which is essentially the same that you see here, except I've line itemed them a little bit differently to note that the PR and outreach is actually, we spend about $10,000. That's for creative work and content development, that sort of thing. And the printing and mailing is exactly that, just the actual printing costs. So it's the same amount, just line items, so you have a better idea of what's actually being spent and how it's being spent. The contractual services, we are using the same annual audit amount at $10,000. Now, we'll talk about this in one of the later items. We have an RFQ out for a new auditor, so we'll see how that develops. But I think the $10,000 should be plenty. The media outreach, that's a separate item as well. That actually is I'm requesting that be increased from $10,000 to $20,000 this year. And what we're really looking to do is really get the RMA's name out there a lot more in this coming year, since we have many more projects. We're looking to do the aesthetic project where we will be involved in Chavez. We are certainly obviously involved in America. So I think it's time that we really start rolling out more outreach efforts. That includes social media, includes general RMA newsletters, as was suggested by Member Melendez, which I think is a really good idea, just to update the community on what the RMA does in general, but then specifically some of the projects. So not as narrowly defined as the Americas Project newsletter that we're doing, but something a little bit more general that will inform the public on the RMA and what we're up to. So
I'm not convinced that's going to work. I mean, for better or for worse, we live in an extremely apathetic community. We've never had anybody, I think once, maybe twice, comment. And, we tried the PR thing when Suzanne, I think, was it just, I don't know. I think those $20,000 could be better used to, for the office or the laptop or the equipment or whatever. But, we'll see what happens. But I'm not convinced that media outreach is something that we ought to do.
I think, I respectfully disagree. I think we have an obligation to continue to reach out to the community and let them know what's going on. And Raymond has upped this at my urging, because I think it's important we continue, do things like this newsletter. And we have the resources through Atkins North America. We're using one of their contractors to help us do these things. We need to continue to put what we're doing out there. And this is not a large amount of money to just inform the community what we're doing, let them know what's going on with our projects, give them an outlet to come visit us or let us know how we can serve the community better. I think it's important and I'm not sure we'll spend all this, but we wanted to at least begin. And I think when Ms. Michaels left, there was a bit of a hole in the organization. It's important for us to go out and continue to reach out to the community on a regular, consistent basis.
I think it's a small amount of money, given the amounts that we handle. So it's not going to be a big problem. But if you're going to spend 20 and then 30 and then 40, and over time it's going to grow in this community outreach, I suggest that we have some way to measure that it is actually working. I'm not sure what that measuring mechanism might be, but we have to figure out a way of. We have to have a way to figure out whether it's reaching people. Yeah, not just because it would seem that it would go into a black hole, and we would not know who's actually. If you were to go out there and do a poll and say, "What's the RMA?" Right. Would even one person know what the RMA is?
See, the way I look at it is the projects we undertake have a tremendous impact on our community, right? And good or bad, that impact can be measured by who comes to our open forum. We've been meeting, I don't know how long, 3 years, maybe 4 years?
4.
How many people have actually come to this forum?
1 or 2.
Exactly. And to me, a good gauge or measurement or metric to gauge our public outreach will be if people start coming here, because they should be coming here. These projects cost a lot of consternation, cost a lot of conflict at the beginning until they're created, And I'm surprised no one's come to complain to us about it. How do we know what is on the other side of the equation besides ours, which is the community, unless they come and speak to us? So we need to find a way, no matter what the cost is, in my opinion, to reach them, because otherwise we're operating in a vacuum. We really aren't getting any feedback from our constituents. Okay?
Okay. No, I don't have a problem with the outreach. I just think in El Paso, it just doesn't seem to work.
Well,
very
we haven't found a way to make it work. I don't know if it's the media we're using, or, I don't know, we got to find a way. But we've got to reach out, and it's incumbent upon us, not on them, to find a way to reach them. You know, as a business does, if I'm in any kind of business, I've got to identify my market and then find a way to reach them, whether it's social, print, what you name it, you know, electronic. We've got to find a way. Otherwise, I mean, this is 4 years later, and the projects we've impacted and all the consternation we're causing out on the east side, and no one is yet to come and talk to us.
I believe part of that 20,000 is directed towards items like this America's Project update, other projects, and I think it's important to get the word out to the public, specifically the motoring public, about what we're doing.
I mean, it is the most visible project on the east side right now. Everyone, the number of people that are impacted by that is huge. So maybe we need a big banner on the construction site brought to you by.
And I
the
don't know,
RMA.
maybe we convene some of the,
Cell phone number.
I know.
exactly, day and night call. I don't know, Raymond, maybe we need to convene some people that are experts in this field to find and see if there's a way, in both English and Spanish. You know.
Yeah.
Obviously, we haven't found the key to reach these people.
Right.
But it's essential we find a way to do it.
Maybe you could, I'd be curious if you ask some of your students in your classes,
I talk about this all the time in my
and
classes.
what reaches the younger generation, because they're the ones that, you know, these people in college, and they're the ones that are going to be living with this infrastructure for the longest amount of time. I mean, I'd be curious to know what we could do to reach out to that.
I think the Facebook thing is a really good thing. We don't have a Facebook page, right?
Actually, we do.
Yeah, we do.
Now, it hasn't been touched since Suzanne left, which is built into this. I mean,
The Facebook is really the thing
Twitter,
right now.
Facebook, but again, those require someone to maintain it
Right.
and keep it updated, post pictures,
Right.
and we just don't have that in that resource on
And
here
in a
yet.
stream, like a discussion board, I bet you that people would actually respond on the page.
Yeah, this presentation should be on our Facebook account.
So if Raymond gets a laptop, then he can.
Yeah, we get to know.
then it's all
We'll get
on.
you
It's all gonna
two
be-
laptops.
All the free time you have, Raymond, to
Yeah,
maintain
right.
the Facebook page.
One of those Bluetooth things for you.
This is going to be great. This is working out well. Actually, let me amend this and reduce that.
Be careful what you ask for.
That's right.
That's right.
Well, so the next item is under capital expenditures, and I'll mention the legal services is staying the same as last year. The big item, the big change here is really the general engineering consultant services, which has increased from 10,000 to 150,000. Now, this is a big change, and let me talk a little bit about this and the reason for it. Prior to this, the projects that the RMA has worked on to date are really major projects, and they all have funding tied to them. So the way that we have worked with the general engineering consultant is in a very narrow way. It's all been specific project-based, and specific project funding that is provided to bring on the GEC. So that's when we normally see a work authorization. You'll see, by way of example, work authorization number 1 is the planning PDA, and the resources are already there with the project as the agreement is executed with TxDOT. What I'm envisioning under this general engineering consultant services here, and we'll actually talk a little bit in more depth under item 9, is a separate work authorization that is essentially an on-call agreement with the GEC, which basically says it's a not-to-exceed amount up to $100,000, whereby when we are beginning to look at projects, which is essentially the new phase that this RMA is now entering into, we're looking at whether or not we should be developing parking facilities, whether or not we should be doing hike and bike trails. When we identify something and we need some just very general engineering work, I'll be able to call them under this new work authorization and begin having some preliminary work done, even though it's not tied to a specific project that has specific project dollars associated with it. So that's what I'm envisioning here. And again, we'll talk a little bit in more depth under item 9, but that's really what you see here in terms of the proposed budget line item of $150,000. And in fact, I should mention, I've also parsed that out into really two areas. 100,000 I'm proposing go under item 9 to the GEC for general work. Outside of that would be a remainder of 50,000 where we could call in individual, whether it's individual firms, individuals that work here in the community, and use them on an as-needed basis. So that's really what I'm proposing under this item.
I was under the understanding that maybe the 100,000 was part of a 2-year agreement, or are we looking at spending that over 1 year?
That's the 2 years. So the work, item number 9, which is a work authorization number 9, the on-call is a 2-year.
Got it. Any questions on the budget?
If it's 2 years, you're going to encumber funds now for the following year, is that what it is?
No, sir. I'm encumbering that it's a 2-year, the term is up to 2 year, but what I'm asking for in this next fiscal year is up to 100,000.
So you could use 100,000 this year.
Right. And in fact, let me talk a little bit about that as well. And again, this is really, we're kind of talking a little bit about item 9, but what I'm really envisioning is this work authorization that is an on-call service. And then I would be able to issue what we're referring to as supplemental work authorizations, and each of those would be up to $25,000. Now that's the authority that you granted me under the procurement policies already. So we're operating within the existing procurement policy. So that $25,000 could go to a fairly large project to the GEC. Once that supplemental work authorization is executed, and the executed supplemental identifies the scope, the proposed time, and the amount, then I would send that to the board and brief you all at the very next board meeting. It's an expedited process, really, is what it is. And really, it's, as I mentioned, it's within the procurement policies that we have to date, but in order to comply with the existing master general engineering consultant agreement that we've got, this is the way that I'm proposing to do it. And it keeps you all really in control so that you know that not only would any individual project not exceed 25,000, but the total project, or rather the total agreement would not exceed 100,000. And you would be updated.
Per year?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But the agreement is for 2 years.
That's right.
And the important thing is we would see every supplemental work agreement for every dollar of that money that is spent up front. Is that correct, Raymond?
Yes, sir.
So we'd have complete control and accountability.
Right. But, and the importance really, it's really to expedite and really kind of streamline this process so that, actually the perfect example is the RFQ for auditing services. I will need somebody to review the submittals, and I plan on using the GEC. Well, right now I don't have an avenue to do that. So the first supplemental that I anticipate is bringing on the GEC to review those submittals over the next coming weeks, and spend maybe some very minimal amount, but I don't have to bring to you a specific work authorization that requires board approval for that very small project. So that's really the intent.
I will tell you that during our finance committee with Mr. Vogt and the chair, David Marcus, we went line by line, and I think Raymond did a very good job of projecting out our needs for our coming year and being conservative on there, but also giving us this type of flexibility as we move ahead with looking at new projects. So and we're recommending, the Finance Committee is recommending that the board approve the budget.
So is that the motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Budget is approved.
Thank you.
Item 9, discussion and action on a board resolution authorizing the executive director to execute work authorization number 9 with Atkins North America, Inc. to provide various general engineering consultant services on an as-needed basis.
So as we were just discussing under the prior item, this is the work authorization that I'm proposing. Again, we're looking at a total amount not to exceed of $100,000. This would be between the GEC and the RMA. And then I would enter into supplemental work authorizations for the individual work projects, and none of those could exceed $25,000. In the event that we actually need a project that has a projected cost of $26,000, I would still be required to come back to you with a separate work authorization, and it would require separate and specific board action and approval for that.
For an additional or the entire item to be approved?
I'm sorry?
For additional funding or just?
Well, if there were a project for $26,000, it wouldn't fall under this work authorization.
okay.
It would be work authorization number 10, for
Okay.
example. So that way we're still working within the procurement policies which allow me execution authority up to 25,000.
And I think it's important to note, there's no current work that's currently set up to spend that money. We want that money, as Raymond mentioned, as we're looking at doing different things, such as potential parking structures, and as the RMA is evolving and looking at other projects outside the comprehensive mobility plan, that's what these dollars are for, correct, Raymond?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. So what you see,
A not to exceed number is what it is. It's not really a firm number, it's not to exceed.
that's correct.
Move approval. Second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Item 9 is approved. Item 10, discussion and action on the Executive Director Report A, Proposition 12 Bond Update. Raymond?
Okay, so what you have before you, and in fact what was passed out, you received it in the board packet, but it was black and white, so we provided a colored copy. It's a little bit easier to read. You should have that in front of you now. Proposition 12, and actually we briefed you a little bit last month, and I just kind of wanted to update you on the process to date. As a reminder, Proposition 12 is a bond program that the voters of the state of Texas approved several years back. However, it requires legislative action to actually authorize the issuance of that debt. Prior to the current discussions, the legislature authorized, I believe it was the issuance of $2 billion. And after that, there were $3 billion left to authorize. The legislature authorized that remaining $3 billion this past session. And what you see before you is really the areas, the El Paso area is slated to generate $48 million from that bond issuance. So what has been happening to date, and as we discussed at the last meeting, the MPO and TxDOT and all of the MPO members have been discussing potential projects for the use of that $48 million. So what you see before you now is the latest draft that has come out of the TPAC, which is a subcommittee of the MPO board, which stands for Transportation Project Advisory Committee. Yes, okay, thank you. So it's a subcommittee of the MPO which generates the proposed approaches for the use of these dollars. This came out of the TPAC, and in fact, actually, I should, to be a little more clear, the TPAC did some work, but didn't really come up with final recommended projects for the MPO. So instead what happened was that the current MPO chair, Representative Pickett, met with several members and created a separate subcommittee to identify the projects that the region should spend the Proposition 12 dollars on. And in fact, what they ended up doing was not only identifying how to spend the $12, but identified other available MPO dollars and really essentially created what's like a little mini 2008 comprehensive mobility plan, because really what they're doing is they're spending the Prop 12 dollars plus additional coordinated border infrastructure funds dollars, CMAQ, which are congestion mitigation and air quality dollars, STP, which are major mobility project dollars, 425 plan dollars, and others. So what you see before you is really a regional approach that was developed by Representative Pickett's committee to really leverage all of the dollars out there to develop the most projects. Mm-hmm. So anyhow, that's the general background of what was developed. So of particular importance to us as the RMA is the inclusion of the 5th direct connector for the Americas interchange. And you'll see that, I believe it's on the sixth line. And what we're looking at doing, what the MPO committee is looking at doing is actually bringing in dollars from various sources so that we can get that 5th direct connector done. Now, I should mention to clarify, as you know, the current Americas project is developing 3 direct connectors. The 4th direct connector is the westbound to southbound, which is the tallest and the most expensive direct connector. So because we couldn't afford that one, we're actually looking at the 5th direct connector, which is the westbound to northbound, which would head up into the far east and eventually into the northeast area of town from out of town. And I should mention the 4th and the 5th have very similar traffic projections according to the most recent metropolitan transportation planning maps and projections. So we've essentially switched those. So we're looking to pursue the 5th direct connector. That project is estimated by TxDOT at $23 million. And the way that the committee is proposing to pay for that project is $8.7 million from Proposition $12. I should step back once again. Proposition $12 are supposed to be brought down into a portion goes directly to the regional MPO. The other portion goes directly to the TxDOT district in the area. So that's why you see the two columns there under Proposition 12. Of the MPO dollars, this committee is proposing that $8.7 million come from the MPO, $3.8 million come from TxDOT. From that, an additional $2 million from the CBI funds available to the MPO, $1.5 million from the CMAQ dollars available to the MPO, and then you'll see $7 million being proposed from what's referred to as an RMA contribution. What you see there really is, if you recall, with the Americas Interchange project, we went out to bid for 4 direct connectors. The bids came in high. We issued what's referred to as a best and final offer under the scenario where we're looking for 3 direct connectors, and we scaled back a number of additional scope items from the project. The bids came in lower, and in fact, we actually have some additional funds that are available. So what the committee is proposing is that the RMA kick in $7 million from those additional funds, combine them with all the other funding sources, and then the region would actually be able to afford this 5th direct connector. So this proposed item came out of that committee, approved, and is now, and in fact has gone to the TPAC and was approved by the TPAC, and now goes to the full Transportation Policy Board, which is the governing board of the MPO, and that goes on their agenda for the 9th of September. So it's coming up a week from this Friday.
So we'll know by September 14th.
We'll know by the 9th, actually.
Yeah,
Well,
by the 9th, but I mean for our meeting on the 14th.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Okay.
So we'll know. And just so you know, what we are doing on our end is we're running through our estimating procedures to make sure that we can actually get the project done for $23 million. We're also looking at all of the contractual requirements and contractual changes that we would have to do in order to make this work. In other words, how do you take money out of this existing project and move it over to a new direct connector? So we're looking at all those procedural steps that have to happen in order to make this work.
And are we proposing to have this happen soon? I mean, is this going to be done during this construction period, just added on to what they're doing now?
Well, the current proposal we're actually looking at various scenarios. The first scenario would be we actually add it as a change order to the existing design build contract and basically ask the folks that are on board now to do it for this $23 million. Other scenarios that we're looking at are the RMA through its GEC could do the design work now, and then once AGB is complete in January of 2013, we'd actually have a new contractor come in just to do that additional direct connector, and then any other work we wanted them to do at that time as well. So we're looking at all of the potential scenarios that could unfold.
Perhaps in the future, it's going to cost us more to get this done.
Yeah.
That's true.
Right, and so the amount that if we commit to this and we can't get it done in this phase, 3 or 4 years later, we're talking about.
And where would all
That's
this,
absolutely correct. And in fact, part of the estimating process includes the year that the construction would actually begin. So that's all of those are inflated to be the actual year. So all of that is taken into account as well. So all of the numbers that the GEC and the attorneys are providing to us factor all of those scenarios in there.
and where would all this money be pooled? All these different numbers, TxDOT or somewhere? Our contribution would go to them, and then they would pull it in.
Well, and those are the scenarios that we're looking at as well. Who would actually do the design? Who would actually do the construction? Now, obviously, I'm making the argument that the RMA should be in charge of it as RMA funds and RMA projects.
And
We're
we're
already on
already
the site.
doing the other parts. So
Absolutely.
we just attach that.
Right.
If you can convince them to
Right.
do that.
But beyond that, we need to make sure that it makes the most sense for the community as well. So that's part of the discussion that's going on today. And in fact, the MPO action anticipated for September 9th won't speak to who's doing what. It's just an approval of the project list and an approval of the identification of the funds to that project.
Okay.
That discussion would be held right after that.
Can I speak on this? My name is Jose Reyes. I work for a local consultant, Parkhill, Smith & Cooper. And under considerations of how to design and construct this, and I'd like to ask the board to at least consider putting up RFP to give other engineers opportunity to design the work for the RMA. As you all know, I mean, any project that come out for construction, I mean, engineer, local community, I mean, we're looking for work basically, and I think for the procurement process, maybe consider at least put it out there for the local community opportunity to do this, and I, to me as an engineer, I've worked as an engineer for 16 years, and change orders are not cheap. There's no incentive for the contractor to give you a good price. It's going to be expensive. So competition is always, especially if there's tough times, you're going to get a lot better prices when you do open it up for competition. Whether it be design build or design bid build. But if you cut out that process, it's going to cost you money. That's my experience. A lot of projects we're seeing, I mean, the contractors are coming in very low. TxDOT just saw in this past Cesar Chavez and also on the Trans Mountain, very low bids. I mean, extremely, and that's because of competition. So you have to kind of consider that, it might save some money in the long run for the board, for the projects. So please, take into consideration.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I'll mention that will definitely be part of the discussion in terms of what the recommendation to the board will be in the end. Absolutely.
Okay. So there's nothing required right now?
It's just an update.
But on the 14th, we'll have a nice discussion on this, a juicy discussion.
Hopefully we have the ability to build that fifth direct connector.
I agree.
And, and hopefully the stars align and we can get it done in the scope of how the project's being done now. I don't think it's ideal to have it done after the project's completed, but
Right.
we'll get some more clarity and figure out what the direction is and how we're going to proceed once we understand if the funds are even available, and then we can start having those discussions and looking at opportunities for how we can best leverage those dollars and get the best deals. So,
Can you align stars and planets, right?
We're trying. We're doing what we can. I'll mention one last thing about these Prop 12 dollars. The direction from the legislature has also been that half of the Prop 12 dollars be let in summer of 2012, and the other half in the summer of 2013. So there are some pretty tight timelines associated with this as well. So I think that we strengthen our argument by pointing out that we can do this work very quickly.
Okay.
Item 10B is request for qualifications, professional auditing services update, and then 10C is the America's Interchange Project first SIB loan payment.
Mr. Chairman, I have to leave to another commitment, but I think there is a quorum. There's enough quorum, so I won't leave you without a quorum. Thank you.
And I'll be very brief, actually. The RFQ for professional auditing services, I just wanted to mention that, of course, as a reminder, it was issued on July 28th. We received questions from potential proposers on August 11th. Responses to those questions were posted online on August 18th, and the submittals are actually due September 1st. So we're anticipating some good responses. In fact, we actually received one response already, and I've heard from another firm that they will be providing a response as well. So we hope to have lots of competition on this item as well. And I'll brief you on that shortly. So that's just an update that the process is ongoing, and it should be coming to a close actually tomorrow. Beyond that, I think we already discussed the SIB loan payment. I just wanted to brief you all on that. So subject to your questions, that's all that we have. That's all that I have for you.
Any other questions? We have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? We are adjourned on August 31st at 10:09 a.m. Thank you.